If ever there was a time to think ahead, it's now. To explore opportunities in a place that's fully invested in the future. Here, in this city of great openings, you'll find a sandbox for the inventive, a launchpad for the adventurous, and an all-access pass to the Greater Bay Area, to China, and to the world. Life is made richer, not just by enterprise, but by culture, cuisine, and adventure. Here, you can unleash your potential, scale the peak, raise the bar. So, bring your foresight in fintech, biotech, and robotech. Welcome dream chasers, startup makers, and innovators. Welcome to a global business hub that's connected and dynamic. Welcome to Hong Kong, a world of opportunities.
Welcome to BODW 2022 Global Live. My name is Sarika Choi.
And I'm Vincent Tang. Tonight, we have an interesting slate of discussions that explore how design empowers change in everything from hospitality to Asian culture, and from the physical world to the virtual.
That's right, Vincent. And our first session would be one of the most popular one, as it spotlights the most exciting tech of our times, the Metaverse.
Without further ado, let's introduce today's panel's moderator, Mr. Darren Chakri.
The Metaverse is becoming increasingly important to our work and lives. It changes how we view the world and interact with brands. And companies are taking note as they strive to create a strong digital presence As a result, virtual worlds have exploded in popularity, and investments in the technology that makes it possible is increasing rapidly. This opened up a world of opportunity and possibilities for designers and creatives to shape whole new vista of brand engagement. In a world of mixed, augmented, and virtual reality, how will brand push the boundaries of creativity in the metaverse? Our discussion today includes some of the most innovative thinkers in all things virtual. Emma Chiu leads the in-house futures and innovation think tank at Wunderman Thompson Intelligence. The agency builds long-term strategies based on qualitative and quantitative insights that incorporates cultural and behavioral change, sector innovation, and zeitgeist shifts. Aaron Lau is the founder and CEO of Gusto Collective, a firm he founded in 2020. The collective delivers best-in-class storytelling and immersive experiences across Web 2 and 3, powered by the latest technology. Aaron also serves on the board of Parsons School of Design in New York, the Nature Conservancy Asia Pacific Council, as well as the Design Trust in Hong Kong. Grace Chan is Head of Brand and Brand Partnership Asia Pacific for HSBC. Grace has been occupied with taking HSBC to the Metaverse through its partnership with the Sandbox. Previous to this, Grace worked in brand, public relations, and consulting in multiple industries, including at American Express and the Coca-Cola Company. Our moderator will be Darren Chakri. Darren is Managing Director of the Hong Kong Initiative, which brings together outstanding talent from around the world to design and create digitally connected, immersive experiences.
Well, welcome back. We're so excited to kick off our last evening of BODW, really talking about the most transformational change that we're going to see in our generation and building towards Web3 and the Metaverse. But it's kind of an interesting story because when we say the Metaverse, it's like digital. Do we really know what this includes? What does it mean behind all of this? And great to have a wonderful panel today. Aaron, nice to join us in the studio here, and Grace. Also calling in from England, Emma, very nice to see you tonight. I guess good morning,
Hi, lovely
right?
to be joining the session.
So
yeah, I'm in Miami at the moment, yes.
Oh, you're in Miami. Where in the world is Emma? We're always seeing where you are at some particular point in time, right? So let's kick it off. The Metaverse, complicated word. So what is your definition of the Metaverse and how would you describe it?
Do you want the intimidating version or the unintimidating version?
Something that everybody will understand.
Okay. So the metaverse is just a virtual space. If you make it simplistic, it's like a 3D environment, except it only exists in the digital world. And it's a world that you can do everything that you've been doing in the real world, play, shop, interact, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Grace.
My version is not intimidating. I think the metaverse is really the next way of how human beings will interact and communicate and transact and really engage with each other. I mean, effectively, you are an avatar. You're another character in the metaverse space. You can control that avatar, you can deploy that avatar, and you can leverage that avatar, your second self, to engage with other people and avatars in this new digital environment.
Okay, it's getting a little more detailed. Emma, I'm curious what your version is.
I often say if you take the word metaverse out of our conversation, we're really talking about the evolution of technology and how we're interacting in the digital space. There will be an evolution of the metaverse. Right now, as it exists, we are understanding it as a series of virtual, three-dimensional, reactive, persistent worlds. Eventually, we will progress into a place where our physical and digital lives will converge together.
I think that's a very important criteria, is where it has to work in both the physical as well as the virtual, and they're connected. It's interesting, I went to the dictionary just to see what is the definition in the Merriam Dictionary. And it says, the metaverse, the concept of a highly immersive virtual world where people gather to socialize, play, and work. It's pretty straightforward. Now where it gets complicated, if I break it down a little further, we go in, what are the primary features? And there's several primary features that we have in it. One is it's persistent, that this is a world that continues to exist even when the individual players, 24/7, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Two, that it connects the digital and the physical worlds, as we're saying, because it was built out of a virtual world. And I think it's exciting because more and more we're seeing that the virtual world, the technology, is almost going to look like the real world in some Unreal, Epic games where they're doing it. So it's not like it's the gaming world that we see today. There's really this ability that we're going to be able to feel like it almost looks like we're in the real world, but it's a virtual space. Three, that it's immersive. And this is an important element, that we want immersive experiences within this 3D world. It's available and synchronous, and multiple users can come in and access this space all at the same time, all in real time, similar to the big game worlds that we're used to in that. So it's really the gaming world meeting with the virtual world in these other spaces. And then really quickly, it's about the users. Users created content, users created, shaped, and delivered behind that. And this is where you're creating a digital identity for yourself, and it's interoperable. Being that interoperable is an important element that will be built into this, that me as my digital identity, what is your digital identity that you use?
Mine?
Yeah?
Aaron.
Aaron. So you're kind of like me. I use the world. Other people will create kind of anonymous characters that help to bring out who they are, their world behind it. But they can take everything they own. It's about owning your digital assets. It's about, really in Web3, it's decentralized. And it's now, instead of having to sign up for Facebook, IG, WeChat, all these other ones, it's really about now that you own it, the time you spend, what you do, and you move your identity across all the different metaverses. So interoperable really allows you to jump across everything rather than have to sign into every single world that you're entering into. And the last point, it's decentralized. Decentralized really being that the community votes, the community says what we want, how do we want it to operate, what do we want to do it. And this is giving the power back to the digital people, I think. And it's exciting time. And Emma, you've really done some amazing white papers on the metaverse. I keep on looking. As soon as I get a Wonderman email, I'm like, okay, what's the latest white paper? But why don't you talk about some of the trends that you see happening in the space, and what does that look like?
Thank you, Darren. Yes, there's a lot happening in the metaverse space, and particularly over the last year and a half, we're seeing more of that. Some of the consumer data that we found is, when we conducted a survey last year in summer, only 32% of people had heard of the term metaverse. Fast forward to March of this year, 72% had heard of the term metaverse, and that's going to continue. So we're seeing awareness pick up. However, still the usage around virtual worlds and metaverse is still very low. But I really do think that's going to change, and particularly when we start thinking about the younger generation, they'll start engaging more with the metaverse in a way that's very natural to their lives. It's not going to be the metaverse, digital lives. It's just going to be life for them. So I just want to take you through some of my trends and observations that I've seen. As we know, there's been an evolution when it comes to the term metaverse. It's really changed from a sci-fi concept into a reality. And with that change, we're seeing that the original premise of the metaverse and how it was something that felt quite dystopian is quite different now. We're using it in a way that really intertwines with our life as we experience it today. And there's a number of components that make up and contribute to the metaverse. And these are some of the things that we've already discussed. They include virtual worlds, so three-dimensional persistent space. And these are places where we can feel more immersed in and engage with people. And of course, more importantly, build a community around. So social is a key aspect to the metaverse. And as part of that, you want to be creating your own identity in these digital spaces. So avatars are going to be important. So we're going to slowly be fading away the blue avatars that we think of when we think of that word avatar. But now we're going to start thinking about who our avatars are going to be digitally. And I'll go on to talk a little bit more about that later. Next, we will start seeing these layerings of a lot of technologies that have been existing for a long time, but they've been advancing. So these alternative realities that we're starting to see. Next, we're going to think about what ownership looks like. And non-fungible tokens have been a huge part of what digital ownership is going to be like in these spaces. And it's really helped propelling what we're looking at in terms of digital currencies. So this new digital economy that we're also propelling. And finally, something we have touched on, a decentralized internet, which is very ambitious, but the metaverse is going to be a huge component to informing Web3. And this is a world where we are all part of ownership when it comes to the internet and Web3. With the metaverse, we've seen that it's been a huge creative catalyst. It's really propelled a next generation of creatives for us. Finally, we're seeing creative power in the hands of the users. So the users are actually feeling very empowered by the types of technologies that they have at the touch of their fingertips. From a survey that we conducted in summer of last year, 92% of people said they believe technology opens a whole new world of creation for them. And 72% believe that creativity today is dependent on technology. And with that, we also spoke to a number of creatives in this space. And one creative, Helena Dong, she says that digital tools have activated an entirely new world of creativity, one where creations can transcend physical limitations. So actually, the metaverse is allowing us to really expand our imaginations, actually think about how can we really push the limits of what we're creating in these digital spaces that are not bound to these physical limitations that we are experiencing right now. As part of that, we're also seeing more and more brands handing over creative control to users. So something that Darren mentioned earlier is that it's going to be user-defined, the metaverse, and we're seeing brands being aware that they need to start thinking about creating tools that doesn't dictate how people should be creating, but rather work with people to create projects and designs that they want to be creating, and also offer marketplaces where they can then do something and display and sell and buy their designs. When we think of the metaverse and when we think of digital, something people talk about quite a lot is how it really changes our understanding of reality. Of course, we know we can't smell or taste in the metaverse. However, people are thinking about how can we tap into these senses? How many times have we been passively watching something on television and started salivating because it's a food show, or making sure we cook, or making sure we prompt to our groceries? Now, with the metaverse, we're creating a far more engaging way to tap into these senses, and I think we're starting to find new interpretations of these different types of senses. Now we're also moving into these avatars and identities that we were talking about. So I'm calling these enriched identities, where we found in a survey that we conducted in March of this year that 88% say they want their online self to reflect their real life ethics and values. So increasingly people aren't creating different versions of themselves online, but in fact they're creating ones that align with their physical selves, their true selves. In addition to that, we also found that people think the metaverse can allow for a more authentic and visual version of themselves. 76% of people who say they know what the metaverse is say they want their avatar to express their creativity and individuality in ways that they can't in the physical world. And over half of people, 51%, feel it would be easier for them to be their true, authentic self in the metaverse. So perhaps in the metaverse, people are able to tap into a version of themselves that they can't quite do in the physical world. Then finally, we're moving into a space where we're starting to create societies of people, because it's not just about the individual experience when it comes to the metaverse, it's about people coming together. It's supposed to be social, it's supposed to be about a community. So increasingly, we're seeing these virtual worlds allowing for digital twins of ourselves, digital twins of cities or spaces, for us to interact with and to go to on a daily basis. There's a Gartner report that predicts that in 2026, 1 in 4 people will be spending at least 1 hour every day in the metaverse. So as more people are engaging in the metaverse and creating digital lives and creating digital spaces that belong to them, what will this look like, and how can we continue to think about how this virtual world will extend, inform, and change the way our physical lives are? And just to have a bit more of an uplift, the metaverse is said to bring people together and also foster inclusivity. 70% of people around the world say that the metaverse will be inclusive. In addition, 62% say it has the ability to be more inclusive than the physical world. And in addition, 64% believe the metaverse can bring people together. So there is a lot of thought in terms of what the metaverse can offer, that the physical world can, but also cannot do. And perhaps in the metaverse, we are able to enhance and enrich our lives and our societies as we know it.
Emma, it's exciting that you're saying the metaverse, they're looking at it, 72%, I believe, saying it's about inclusivity. But with that, if you're creating, let's call it avatars and characters that are not based on your real physical identity, isn't there a big gap here between what's fake and what's real, and how do brands know even how to navigate this then? And as a person, do you want to really jump into somebody? Do I trust you? Your character, is it a real person? Is it some other person pretending to be somebody? So isn't that also a dangerous place to play for a brand?
I think increasingly what we're finding is that people aren't creating alternative aliases of themselves. They're creating a version of themselves that is true to their physical form, and they're just extending that into the digital world. So we're not thinking about wanting to create a version of ourselves that is very, very different to our physical forms. In fact, we're just creating something that is an extension of that, and perhaps can even enhance that as well. So with brands, increasingly we're moving to a time when we want brands to be more authentic. And we're doing that by being more authentic in itself. And we're seeing that already in social media. I think that's a great example to look, where we're trying to shed this sort of beautified or perfectionist world and curated versions of people and influencers. We want to tap into people who are more real. And we're going to see that when it comes to avatars as well.
Well, speaking of brands, Aaron, you've been building out the augmented, virtual, extended reality, mixed reality experiences for brands and large brands in Hong Kong here. We were able to catch up with you at your studio here in Hong Kong, so let's take a look at the video.
Hello, I'm Aaron Lau. I'm the CEO and founder of Gusto Collective. Gusto Collective is the first brand tech group in Asia, and what we really want to do is to actually modernize the way stories are told. So we combine traditional storytelling with technology, particularly immersive technology, so we can engage the younger generation in a way that previously cannot be done through traditional technology like television or digital ads and so on. We use a lot of AR technology, VR, XR, and more we're using Unreal Engine, Unity, So we are technology agnostic, but we deploy this technology to power the storytelling in such a way that you get sort of sucked into the story, so to speak. The way we look at this is you gotta have to find a phygital element to bring somebody from the physical world and give them some incentive to visit the virtual world, be it an experience that they couldn't experience in the physical world. And what's interesting about it, you could find yourself sitting next to your best friend who's immigrated to China, for instance, and they could be, in that same experience as you are. I think that's a glimpse of the future of the metaverse. Brands are super curious and interested to entering the metaverse. Our advice to clients would be, don't worry about the metaverse, it will evolve. Nobody's got a crystal ball. The technology is evolving, so what isn't possible today could be possible tomorrow. However, the best approach is take baby steps into the metaverse because you need to participate. If you never participate, you'll find yourself falling behind further and further and further. Now you have a way to engage your brand lovers, both physically and virtually, and if you can create a roadmap that takes them between this physical and digital element, you got a winner in your hand. If you have a metahuman, it's almost like your spokesperson. So you can engage that at multiple levels in your brand campaign, in your marketing and all that. Last but not least is data. You also have direct access to the data. If you work with an influencer, the data belongs to the influencer and not to the brand. So those are some of the reasons that why brands are becoming more and more interested in metahumans. The Warriors of Future is a very interesting project for us. It's a very long-term collaboration because when Louis Koo, the owner of the IP, came to us, he shared with us the plot. His idea is this is not a movie. He doesn't want to market this movie like a movie. So we created NFTs of the movie itself. So in the movie, the two lead actors wear an exosuit to fight off the aliens. So we took this exosuit and we created NFTs of this exosuit. So there are 10,000 unique NFT in the portfolio. We also incentivize people who collect the full suit. If you collect the full suit, we will airdrop to you a limited and exclusive movie clip that only you would have it, and you can brag about this, and often this is the NG shots. So you created this immersiveness with the movie. Today, we have about 40,000 just in Hong Kong with this community. And then, of course, once you have a community, they become your super fans. They become your spokesperson, your ambassador, and they're spreading the good words of the movie itself. And the actual movie itself made it to the #1 all-time box office receipts in Hong Kong. It's also going global. As you enter the metaverse, be prepared to learn from the metaverse, be prepared to learn from the people you engage in the metaverse and evolve. Just keep an open mind, learn from it, and then it will bring you success. I think metaverse is here to stay.
Are you sure you say I think? Or is it I think, or is it here to stay?
I don't have a crystal ball, but from the last 18 months since we've been, more heavily engaged with the metaverse, I believe it will stay. So I don't think anymore. I do believe it will stay. But it will change as well. What we see today in the world of metaverse will be very different in 5 years' time. One, the consumers are changing, brands are learning, the technologies are evolving, and the way we tell stories will be very, very different. Because at the end of the day, it's the stories, it's the authentic stories that you use to engage your customers, your clients, and whatnot. And technology gives you this possibility to do something that you couldn't do in the physical world.
And I think it's about content, really. This gives us, it was interesting watching the movie, as you talked about that the content, they were creating the content around the metaverse experience as well. That the plot for the next movie was actually components built that what they're doing now with NFTs built within that. So it's really redefining the way that they've been marketing this, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Lewis is quite a visionary in that regard. And
He's the director,
he's,
right?
he's not the director, but he's the owner as well as the lead actor of the movie.
Okay.
And it took 10 years to produce for a Hong Kong movie. That's a very long time, and he put quite a bit of his own money into it. But what's really exciting is he felt the movie is only a starting point, and he wants to build a community. So when he came to us, we said, well, if you want to build a community, the metaverse is the best way to build a community because you can engage your fans 24/7. Like you were saying earlier, both physically in the movie houses, but also virtually on the internet. So we're really excited that we're working on sequel number 2, sequel number 3. He's got 2 or 3 movies of Warriors of Future lined up for the future, and we're already working on what we're going to do to enhance that experience for the fans.
Well, and there was another interest talking about the characters in movies. I think it's also interesting, you touched on MetaHuman, and Gusto's created your own MetaHuman, actually, that you're going to be using for that. And it's fascinating when we look at virtual influencers even. Today, when we see Emma from Japan, she's 400,000 followers. Hatsune Miku, 2.5 million followers. Angie from China, 300,000 followers. Rosie O, South Korea, 200,000 followers, all on virtual characters. And the brands are basically building around their own IP, they're owning this, right? And so why did you get into a MetaHuman, and how do you see it playing out?
It's a very interesting experience for us because we work with a lot of luxury brands, and when we sit down with the CMOs, the CEOs, we often hear concerns about working with influencers because most of these relationships are basically transactional, right? You pay them X amount of money, they do some live streaming for you, and they sell some products, you collect the sales, and then they walk away and do something else. Secondly, KOLs are not scandal-free, so you run the risk of having the government, come down at you. And last but not least is the area about data. Now, of course, that's a very sensitive area, but if you work with a KOL, a real KOL, the data does not belong to you. The data belongs to the KOL because they are her fans, basically, or his or her fans. Mm-hmm. So when we created the MetaHuman, we felt the technology has reached a certain stage that it's now become commercially viable to make MetaHuman that look and talk just like you and I are talking right now. And secondly, I think what we get most excited about is the awesome content that you could create with the new technology via MetaHuman. So for instance, we've done generative data art that have, I think earlier Emma was talking about co-creation. So the generative data art was co-created by people who were actually participating in an auction. And, previously it was not possible. Today you can do this with MetaHuman, and the technology has reached such a stage that it's quite commercially viable, and it takes not as long a time to do this than before.
And what's her name?
Mono C. And she's now 1 year old.
Can you describe her? What's her personality?
She is a virtual artist, and I call her a woman of many contradictions. I'm sure we know quite a few of these lovely ladies. In a nutshell, she is born of data, but lives for art. The backstory is, she's a MetaHuman, and she has a lot of information. But the one thing she couldn't figure out is humanity. Why do we get angry? Why do we feel sad? And because of that quest, then she uses art to explore humanity. So the latest art piece that we did was off the topic, the hot topic of the last 3 years, which is coronavirus. So we use coronavirus to power up data that we collected around the world, and we created this art piece There was actually now a collection that belongs to a collection of the DSL collection, which is one of the 3 largest contemporary Chinese art collection. Again, previously it wasn't possible, and because it's done through a metahuman, it sort of heightened the story appeal.
But let me get this correct. You said we created the art. Now, didn't she create the art?
Well,
she was the artist, right?
Yes, she's the artist, yes.
And the idea is that she's creating art in a digital metaverse.
Yes.
And then ultimately, this is what was sold. Even at the digital art fair in Hong Kong, we saw that was a beautiful piece.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I mean, yeah, I think earlier someone was talking about, the merging between the real and the physical and the virtual. I have the same problem. So I constantly mix up between Mono C as a real person or a virtual person. So I'm constantly mixing up the two.
Oh, great. So over to you, Grace, on this. Now, HSBC, global brand, strong financial governance, compliance, all these really important things. And I think it's really important that the brands, how are they going to get into the metaverse and lay out their proper strategies and do this? And you guys decided to jump right into the sandbox, tied into the Hong Kong Sevens, creating a stadium. So how did that whole project come about? And maybe talk about your process and your learnings from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So why did we do this, right? Emma had earlier talked about the potential of the metaverse, right? The awareness that has just suddenly jumped and multiplied, right? If we're just looking at the data out there, and I know there are many different stats out there, but some say that the opportunity is in the trillions of dollars, the size of the South Korean economy, for example. And all of, this trend is being driven by growing wealth, it's being driven by new technologies, and it's being driven by folks like Aaron, right, who are really willing to explore and really grow these technologies. So with that, we're seeing more and more consumers in the metaverse space, especially the younger generation, the Gen Z, right? And as a marketer, you want to be where your future customers are going to be. A little bit about the Sandbox Rugby program. There's actually a broader story to it, and actually I'm going to just flip to my first slide here. All right, so the technology is not working for me.
Back up.
Back up.
First slide.
Back up. Back.
There we go.
There we go. All right.
How can we be in the metaverse? It's like the day-to-day digital challenges that we all face. It's funny, but
Exactly. Well, the metaverse will help us with that. So the HSBC Metaverse Stadium is actually part of a broader story. I'm so happy to be here live. I've been seeing a lot of these live events over the past few days at the Business of Design Week, and this is what's happening in Hong Kong. We're seeing more live events come back. Everybody is getting really excited about this. The Hong Kong Sevens happened about a month ago. That was a demonstration of Hong Kong coming back. HSBC is the co-title sponsor of the Hong Kong Sevens, and what we did was we really leveraged this opportunity to bring the metaverse to the rugby, to the sport of rugby, and to the Sevens, and also vice versa, bring the sport of rugby to the metaverse. So what we did was we created a series of 6 quests, very much tied in to the sport of rugby and tied in to HSBC. We're telling our brand story and the story of the bank in this community. I'll talk about a few of these quests here. So charge and try, what's that about? So if you are an avatar Aaron, the avatar, would be running on the pitch, trying to score, running away from other players to score that try and then get your points, right? And so for those of you who are not familiar with rugby, a try is equivalent to a goal in soccer. The Try Rugby program quiz is about a community program that HSBC sponsors. It's called the Try Rugby program, whereby we started in 2017 with the support of the Hong Kong Rugby Union and the Hong Kong Education Bureau to really bring the sport of rugby to the local Hong Kong community. So we run clinics across the city so that kids can try rugby. You get it? Supposed to laugh. Where are the rugby balls? It's all about matching the country rugby balls to the different legs of rugby across the world. So really just educating the audience about the world of rugby. Learn Thy History quiz. We're in this really beautiful M+ museum tonight. Did you know that HSBC also has its own archives museum? So we took that and put that in the metaverse to teach players about the history of the bank in Hong Kong. We had another quest whereby you can participate in some of the community work that HSBC engages in the city. Be Well, Be Better. This is about our avatar, Waibe. So he's our rugby avatar who's been playing in the metaverse, who's been playing in the sandbox rugby games for the past few days, and he's just really tired now. So how do you help him regain his energy? You can help him regain his energy by picking up HSBC Life Well Plus badges. So these are these wellness badges that will help you re-energize and so that you can make another comeback. So that's the game, and I'm gonna ask you to play a video for me, please. All right, so this is just a cut of our introduction video showing HSBC in the metaverse, and we've purposely mixed this up between the sandbox's voxel style and real life, just to really show that there needs to be a convergence. Some clips from the game itself. So that's Aaron scoring a try. That is matching balls to the right country. So this avatar is now picking up Well Plus badges, and this is our Clean Waterways boat, which picks up plastic pollution from the harbors of Hong Kong. All right. I wanted to also just share a few learnings that we picked up from this process. You had earlier asked about process, right? So project team and stakeholder education is really important. This is a new space for us. Aaron earlier said that we don't have the crystal ball. Right? So we are learning every day, and the metaverse technologies and applications are evolving constantly. It's a very new space for us. To be honest, when we first started this project, it was just a small core group. And many of us did not have metaverse experience. We quickly found out that we had to pull other people in, and they may not be marketers, they may not be communications people, they may not be designers, they may be from other parts of the organization, but just who really have a passion for this stuff so that we could learn from them, and they played a key role in our project. Wider staff education and engagement is really important. Again, it's a new space. It's really important that when brands enter the metaverse, they engage and they educate their staff as well, because really they're your best ambassadors. Offline and live event integration. So we talked a lot about that, right? The metaverse opportunity and metaverse activations cannot be a standalone. They have to be part of a bigger story. And how do you connect the real life with what's happening in the metaverse, we found that hands-on play was really important in driving engagement and awareness of our campaign. So what is hands-on play? It's really literally holding people's hands in the physical world and helping them to get into your game, showing them how to play in that space. For example, we're a sponsor of Hong Kong FinTech Week, and we had a knowledge booth. At Hong Kong FinTech Week, what happened was we had 2 huge TV screens where passersby and participants would pass by, they would see the video that you just saw, parts of the game, they would want to start to play in that game. So we taught them. We said, hey, yeah, go ahead, have a go, score a try. People got really interested, both as individual consumer players, but we also found that we engaged, I would estimate, quite a few hundreds of people who just wanted to learn more about metaverse activations, how we did it, learnings, what worked, what didn't. So lots to learn.
So what did you learn, though?
What did I learn?
What was the key takeaway? You've been through this whole experience.
Yeah.
You had no idea how you were building before. What was the key thing that you learned?
I think the key thing that I learned is that this is constantly evolving. Keep an open mind. This is like no other project that I had run before, right? It's not linear. Be agile. We did a lot of agile sprints. Do your research. And sometimes you can be quite intimidated by what's happening. But often I found that when we ran into problems or roadblocks, the best solution was probably the most simple solution.
Emma, from your perspective and building out from the brands, looking at this, right now it seems like the metaverse is in a very gamified beginning stage. And some brands, even I was surprised that the major brands were jumping in a gamified sandbox. Sandbox is very gamey. Where do you see this moving towards? And why? How do we take a gamified experience and move it into a business experience or a business-to-business interaction with customers?
I think the two can definitely coexist. There's a great quote from someone who talks quite prominently about the metaverse, Matthew Ball, and he talks about Gen Alphas, so the youngest generation, being born generations of gamers. So if we're starting to see gamers being born into the world, and this is something natural for them, for brands to think about how to best engage them in a gamified way, having gaming touch points, whether it's virtually or physically or both, I think it's key to grabbing the attention of the youngest generation. But another thing I think is important, it's also about how do you use this more immersive mechanisms to create a more human design and approach to the metaverse, because I think we are so caught up in talking about the technology sometimes that we forget to think about how it can help us become more human, how it can make us, be more in touch with our feelings and tap into certain things like empathy. And these are great tools that brands can utilize when it comes to communicating and speaking to their consumers and future consumers.
Aaron, brands, you've been building brands. What's been the biggest challenge that they face stepping into this immersive world?
I was in London 2 months ago, and I met up with a number of our global clients, and almost all of them would ask the same question: how do I monetize the metaverse? It's a fantastic question, because at the moment, it's hard to monetize, because the different metaverse worlds were not connected, and you need to use crypto to transact within that metaverse, and so on and so forth. However, if you take it a more longer-term view, the first step into the metaverse could be, first of all, we already seen some of it, whether it's gamification or the experiential side of the metaverse. That's a possibility with the new technology that allow us to create really immersive experiences. The second thing I believe is really interesting, and this is treat your the community that you created within the metaverse as your super fans club, because these are your ambassadors, because you're engaging them both in the physical world as well as the virtual world, and you're engaging them 24/7. Now, I'd like to sort of add one more thought to it. If you turn the clock back to, let's say, 60, 70 years ago, I wasn't born yet, by the way.
I thought this was Benjamin Button, which was aging, you said.
Right.
It's all AI, meta-human rendering.
I wish Benjamin Button, does exist. But anyway, if you think about 60, 70, 80 years ago when P&G created the soap opera, and at that time, television was only just created for a few years, 10 years or so. People didn't know how to tell stories, how to engage in an audio-visual manner. Today, there are many experts. So the metaverse is also at that embryonic stage. And again, as Grace said, you have to learn, you have to keep an open mind, because the way we engage, the way we tell stories will be very different. But the stories, at the end of the day, are the most important. You got to be authentic. It's just the way you tell a story is now differentiated. So I think that's where the metaverse is the most powerful.
And do you see this as we move into this data compliance and some of these other challenges that the companies and brands have? How do they manage? And Emma, both of you might be able to cover this. It's a really important conversation now. That this is, especially with companies like HSBC, insurance companies. It's data compliance, risk. So how do you manage that with this new gaming and virtual world?
Do you want me to jump in now?
Sure.
Okay, so
Emma, you can follow up on that as well.
I have a very fundamental belief: if you take data from somebody else, you got to have to return something. And I think a lot of the debate and controversies are many of the social media companies, that they took the data, they didn't give the customers anything in return, and they sold the data onto somebody else, and that's controversial. But I think with brands where they engage, and just like a loyalty program, just like your customers' VIP program or whatever, you give them something back, so that they're willingly to be giving up their data because they get something in return. That's human nature. So I think at the end of the day, that's as simple as it takes. It doesn't matter if it's the physical world or the virtual world, it works exactly the same.
Great. Emma?
I think Darren is a great question, and Aaron has answered it brilliantly. So that's it, no joking. I agree. I think, quite often we are approaching the metaverse as a completely new landscape, and we need to create new rules around it. But really, it's a continuation of a lot of digital premises that we already have in place and that we're building upon. So what's exciting now is the metaverse is in its infancy. So how can we make sure we mindfully go about personal data, personal information, privacy, brand safety, when it comes to building this metaverse? So we are at the early stages of the metaverse, but a lot of these rules and regulations around digital and what people want from digital and what laws already exist, that still follows on when it comes to the metaverse. So let's bring a lot of these learnings into the metaverse and make sure we get ahead of any further rules and regulations around it.
Okay, so now it's all the pieces coming together. It feels like, right? We have digital, we have compliance, we have physical, virtual. It's a big jigsaw puzzle coming together. And there's this interesting question from the audience that said it's a potentially controversial question, but objectively, is the metaverse really needed in this world? Who wants to answer? No?
Well, I think the need is created by demand, right? I mean, I earlier talked about the reason that brands are going into the metaverse space is because that's where that next generation is, or that's where this generation is. You want to be where your customers will be, and that's where we're seeing consumers go. More and more, you have avatars of yourself, you have avatars as extensions of yourself, and the need is created by the demand.
Okay, next question from the online audience. And this is coming back to the generation gap, I think. Is this just for the young generation? Is this Generation Z, A, behind that? Or what about the, let's call it, they say, the analog inclined people who are not into gaming, NFT collections? What about us? Why is it inclusive and it doesn't include the older generation?
I really think the metaverse is actually not created only for the young. The young may be the early adopters, as they are often with new technology, new devices, new gimmicks, whatever, because when you're younger, you're just naturally more curious, you're more adventurous. However, if you think about the internet, the metaverse is just the next iterations of the internet. And so it all depends on people like us, people who are like HSBC, Wunderman Thompson, Gusto, or whoever's out there. What do we build in the metaverse? It's ultimately the most important. It's like a printing press. A printing press could print a Bible, and it could print something else that the Bible probably would not approve. So it's the printing press. It depends on what input you put into the medium and what output it comes out. So at the end of the day, it's up to the creator, it's up to everybody who has a part in the metaverse to create experiences, to create interactions that will be inclusive. And that is essentially what I think the metaverse, just like the internet, was all about, is bringing the whole world together.
Digital printing press. I don't know. It's all 3D printing.
Yes.
We're doing that. Grace, last quick question. We've only got 2 minutes left. We're going to do some rapid fire ones. How brands and marketers should prepare and equip themselves for Web3 in the metaverse?
How brands and marketers should be prepared. Always be looking forward. Look at where your customers are going. Do your own research. Keep an open mind. Again, don't get bogged down in too much of the details. Don't get intimidated by these things. And have fun. Have fun with this.
Emma, your quick advice for brands.
I think just see this as an evolution of your digital practice. So when you start thinking about your strategy in the digital environment, think of how it can evolve and also really look for the opportunities here. Don't be afraid. It starts with education. Learn more about your customers, the consumers, what they're up to, and build that into your brand experience.
And Aaron, to close it out, 20 seconds.
I totally agree what's been said about how you play in the metaverse and all that. But one of the most important point I would make would be, if you're a brand, just go into the sandbox or Decentraland and play in it and experience, and then you'll find out some of the problems, some of the challenges, but also some of the benefits. If you've never ever been in the metaverse, you wouldn't know. So go into the Fortnite, go into Roblox, go into Sandbox, Decentraland, and whatnot, and experience it yourself. Then you realize what this is all about.
It's funny, I've asked, every single executive asked in Hong Kong, I said, Sandbox? Yes. Decentraland? These other? Yes. Know all about this. But have you been inside it? Have you actually experienced it? And I only had people that are building it like HSBC and other ones that said yes. And I think that's a great way to wrap up that. Take the extra effort, take the younger generation next to you, sit next to them, jump into the metaverse, and we're going to see you in the metaverse because it'll be my metahuman and Aaron that will meet up somewhere in there. So thank you all for
playing
being
rugby
us here tonight. Yes, playing rugby. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers and moderators. It was the most intriguing discussion.
That's right. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us in the virtual world. I think the possibilities are endless.
Undoubtedly. But right now, we're going to have a short commercial break. But don't step away too fast. Next up, we'll have a keynote session. So we'll see you right then.